Hello, my name is Inigo. No, hello and welcome to another new series. Yeah. So, if you follow my channel, you know I'm all about starting new series. And this is no different, really. I have decided to extend the form of my staple on the channel, the movie vlog, which is not quite a movie review. It's more of a casual experience of sitting down, watching a film and talking about it before, sometimes during, and always after, and transposing that format to an idea that I am going to actively try to conquer my Blu-ray collection. So, conquering my collection, number one. Simply put, what I'm going to be doing is looking at my collection, whether it be a Criterion disc or Artificial Eye, BFI, a regular studio release, whatever it happens to be. A film that I haven't seen before. It has to be a film I've never seen before. Throwing in the disc, watching the film, and talking about it. And in doing so, I will have made a video. I will have started, hopefully, a discussion with you guys as to the actual film. And also, I will have watched a film that I have in my collection that may have been collecting dust. Now, interestingly enough, the film I've decided to start this little series off with is actually a film that I bought maybe a week ago. So it hadn't even had the chance to gather any dust on the shelf. In fact, it hasn't even gone onto the shelf yet. So the film in question is a recent film, 2018 release actually, and it is A Fantastic Woman. This is a film by Sebastián Lelio, a Chilean Argentinian director who made a film also released in 2018 that I thought was phenomenal, Disobedience, which I will be talking about at some point. So purely based on that, I'm excited to check this out, but I also saw that this film was in CJ4Films' top 10 films of 2018, which kind of piqued my interest a little bit. I was already intrigued, I should say, because this film won the Best Foreign Film Oscar last year at the Academy Awards. And yeah, so I'm going to check it out and see what I think. I bought it in FOP last week for £6, which is a great deal. And it's an Artificial Eye Blu-ray release with a nice slipcover, but the film itself is what counts. And so this will be grabbed, put into the PS4, and then this will be a Blu-ray conquered. And you know, because again, I did a full count, and this is many months ago now, but you know, it's still fairly recently. I did a full count of all the Blu-rays in my collection, of which, you know, this is just the ones on the shelves, which are quite a few. And then there's so many stacks on the floor. It's such a mess. I mean, I'll just show you this is like, I mean, hey, it's not Blu-ray Dan, like, you know, it's not that bad as far as the stacking on the floor, but still, it's fairly, yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And I've actually started moving over to the top shelf now. And yeah, so there's a lot. And as I was saying, I did the full count on my collection and worked out how many films in my collection I had seen, how many I hadn't seen. And I believe the full count was somewhere around 700 plus films that I've seen that I own, and at this point it would definitely be over 500 movies that I own that I haven't seen yet. Now, I do try to get to my Masters of Cinema Marathon series, so those won't be counted in this conquering the collection. I was trying to push myself to watch some of the Poundland Blu-rays I bought last year, and I called it Poundland Pressure. Only ever did one of those, and that was Central Intelligence, but that really was a film I wasn't going to watch unless there was some sort of, you know, driving force for me to do it. So a video series seemed like a good idea at the time, but I'm going to consolidate that Poundland Pressure series into conquering my collection. So hopefully this debut episode goes well and the film's good and I'll have something to talk about. So here we go. Okay, really tired now. So I almost considered not filming this part of the video right now. It's like early hours in the morning, but I really wanted to watch this film and push myself to watch it, and I'm really glad that I did. And uh, yeah, I'm feeling like I could have made this video a lot better for the first installment of this Conquering My Collection series. But full disclosure, the past few days have been, 10, 11-hour work days, and then coming home and watching a Jackie Chan movie, and then, filming a movie vlog for it, for Asian Cinema Season 2. And they've ended up like 30 plus minute videos, so like I'm almost burned out at this point in video making, even though you're not going to see those videos for many months, I'm guessing at this point. Regardless, we're here to talk about a fantastic woman. Let me get my screen so I can see where I am. So this is a really good film, even a great one, I would say. Certainly worth the Oscar hype, I think. And one thing I will say is that perhaps the hype that I had in my own head for this film worked against it a little bit, because Sebastian Lelio, just based on the one film that I saw from him, which was Disobedience, I had a really high expectation, and it's intriguing because I think a general moviegoer, or at least a general moviegoer who is open to watching foreign films and appreciates films from all different languages and doesn't get put off by subtitles, that kind of general moviegoer would find this film to be, pretty incredible, and would find Disobedience to be a bit more routine, a bit more, you know, a very well made film, but nothing out of the ordinary. Whereas this is maybe a little bit more extraordinary, and I can definitely see that viewpoint. For me, it's the opposite. This film has moments of fantasy and a real artfulness to the way that it portrays its story. So we'll get into it a little bit here. It's about a transgender woman played by Daniela Vega, who is transgender herself, which is great, and that's a whole other topic you can get into, is when you have transgender characters who are played by not transgender people. A notable example I can think of in a film that I think still really works is Close Knit, the Naoko Ogigami film from a couple of years ago, where we have a transgender character, a woman, who's actually played by a man in reality. And I think he did a wonderful, tender, and realistic performance. But some people, weren't happy with that, and I understand that. I get that perspective. But here, it is, the real deal, so to speak. We have a transgender woman playing a transgender woman. I believe she wasn't an actor before this film. I might be wrong on that, but I think I remember reading that somewhere. And she gives a great performance. I think that I totally believed in everything that this character was going through. The character's name is Marina, and she is seeing a much older man, Orlando, and he is, for all intents and purposes, a straight man. And so his family don't understand this relationship. One, because of the age difference, and two, because, this is a woman who used to be a man, and they can't wrap their heads around that, because it's not like Orlando was gay or anything like that, and that's where you really get into the prejudice of transgender people, and that's really explored in this film. Like they go into it quite a bit, and almost to the point where it's a little over the top, perhaps, where the people are being horrible to her. But you do have people who understand, people who care about her and love her all the same, and even Orlando's brother, who, again, is part of the family that don't like her and don't understand her and don't agree with her. But yet, her partner's brother is a lot more sensitive and understanding of who she is. But the crux of the story is that Orlando passes away in the beginning of the film. And so she's left to grieve over her partner and is left with the unimaginable pain and struggle of not being able to attend his funeral and wake and all that stuff because the family think it's inappropriate for her to be there. Like, imagine that, and to have the government come and investigate her and wonder if maybe she was being paid to be with her partner. I mean, it's stuff that really riles you up. It really angers you that they want to take pictures of her body, for their records and everything. And so that element of the film, that kind of frustration the secondhand frustration you feel for Madina was, I don't want to say captivating because, it's not something that was enjoyable in that sense, but it was, it really drove the story, and it drove my interest in wanting to see things turn around for her. I really was invested in this character and wanted a happy ending for her. And I don't want to spoil things too much, but didn't quite pan out how I thought, and I think that is partly why I'm hesitant to say that it was an amazing film or an incredible film, even though I think it's a very, very strong movie. That it's got so much going for it. The performances are great, and although that raises a whole other kind of issue that I always talk about, which is in subtitled films, in films where you don't understand the language, does it come across as better because the dialogue sounds better in your head when you're reading it than from the person who's performing it. So you could take a performance that doesn't sound good when you hear it in your own language, but just see the written word and it takes on a different kind of interpretation in your head, if that makes sense. But I will say, sometimes you can tell, and I could tell that, in particular the lead actress, Daniela Vega, that she was doing a really good job here, because I mean a lot of it is just in her silent expressions, and she really carries the film with that. There are these moments of fantasy which are really interesting to me, almost like daydreams or kind of magical realizations of the way that Madina is feeling. There's one sequence in a nightclub where she is just really at a really low ebb, and suddenly she begins to start dancing, and then she's surrounded by all these backup dancers, and she's wearing this elaborate costume, and of course it's all going on inside her head. And those little flash moments of fantasy were really, I don't want to say subtle, because the actual scenes weren't subtle, but the way that those little daydreams were dropped into the film were very subtle and weren't overdone. You could very much take that idea and extend it to a whole film where you're seeing everything through the eyes of someone who's a dreamer. But no, it was just every now and again you get this little moment where it kind of, not everything was quite as it seemed in reality, but it kind of reflects something about her character. And yeah, and the music was really good and interesting and different, which that's just such a fucking awful thing to say about anything that's that's a piece of art. Say, oh, it was interesting and different. Ugh. Ugh. Like, yeah. I guess I can't describe why. I'm not a very musical person. I love music and the way that it enhances films particularly, but I couldn't even begin to tell you why I think that it worked. But it just, there was something about it that was, I thought, again, worked with the film. Trying to think if there's anything else really, because I don't want to talk about the ending too much or spoil or give away what happens, but there is a certain, it's not a big part of the film, but it's a part of the film, there's something that Marina is looking for following the death of Orlando, and you really want her to find it. And there's a moment where it looks like it's all set up for her to find it in this certain place, and she doesn't, and that's it. and that's the end of that kind of thread of the film. There's no follow-up or kind of fairy tale conclusion to that kind of small detail, and I like that a lot because it was just untypical. You get trained, you get conditioned into thinking, okay, this is being set up for a payoff here, and sometimes life doesn't give you the payoff, and that's it. There's nothing more, and that was really heartbreaking in a sense. It's not a big part of the film, but it's something that maybe she was holding on to in regards to her deceased partner. And yeah, and I looked up some Letterboxd reviews. I have to say, I'm trying to move away from that now, but I was intrigued to see what people thought of this film. And there's a lot of people who are a little bit middling about it because of the way that this transgender character is represented. And I found that to be interesting, but something that I can't even begin to understand, because it's so completely removed from my understanding of the world, and how people like that feel about the way they're portrayed in movies. There's in particular a sequence where Marina is lying naked on a bed and looking down at her crotch, and we see her perspective, and covering her crotch is a mirror, so she's looking at her own face. So where perhaps her penis used to be, we see her face, and it isn't really made clear whether or not she's had the full operation there. It's kind of brought up, but never really confirmed, because as she says, you don't ask someone about that, rightfully so. But I'm not entirely sure what that visual was meant to be telling us about her, because it was an interesting visual, a striking image, but I wasn't entirely sure what to make of it, and not in a good way, not in a bad way. I just, yeah, so if anyone actually has any thoughts on that, if they've seen the film, how you think that slots into her mindset and her character, I'd love to hear thoughts on that. But yeah, there's quite a few of those kind of striking images in the film. And perhaps I didn't enjoy the ending because I was a little bit removed from the final scene. I don't feel like the final scene was built up enough earlier on in the film as to what her profession is, so it didn't have as much resonance. But also, I guess I was just expecting more of a traditional kind of conclusion to a story like this, and it's kind of telling its own story and doing it a little bit differently, which I appreciated. So I think when I see this again, I definitely will watch it again. I'll probably be able to let go of my preconceptions of how it's going to end, and what the payoff is going to be, and I can just enjoy it for what it is, knowing where it's going, and hopefully enjoying the journey a little bit better. But I thought it was a great drama, really, really good stuff all around, and doesn't come anywhere close to Disobedience for me, but we don't have to look at directors' works and say, well, this wasn't as good as the last one. But I do fall into that trap myself far too often, I think. So one thing that I could perhaps make a part of this series, this might be interesting, is to conclude each video in Conquering My Collection by deciding whether or not I'm going to keep it in my collection, because of course we can watch films and not enjoy them as much as we'd hoped, and decide that we don't want them in our collection, and we can sell them off and buy something else that we would like. So will I keep this movie? Will I keep this Blu-ray? Yes, I will, because it's a great film, because I want to watch it again, and that's it, actually. The tone of my sentence there was leading on to a third, but there really was no third thing there. So I guess the criteria for me would be, would I want to watch it again, and would I want to have it in my collection as a film that I think is worthy of being in my collection? Not that my collection is anything special, but I like owning films that I think are important or great, and most of all films that I enjoy and would like to watch again and again. But there are a few films I own that I've seen that I know I'm not going to watch that for another 5, 10, maybe even 15 years, but I like having it in my collection because I think it's a great film. And you never know when the mood is going to strike you to, do you know what, I'd like to watch that, And speaking of the Jackie Chan videos I've been doing recently, we just watched the 2010 Karate Kid movie. Bought that for Connie 2012. Never watched it. Well, we watched it, as soon as we got it, but never watched it again. And that's been like 7 years. All of a sudden, without ever thinking about that film in those 7 years, we suddenly thought, oh, that Karate Kid movie, I'd like to watch that. It's in the movie room. I can go in, I can grab it, put the disc in 2 minutes. We got the film in high definition. We watched it, we loved it, and so that's what I love about having a collection like that. It's not like wait, that Karate Kid movie, is it on Netflix? No, it's not. Okay, well so that's a film that I've literally had in my collection, and have moved it from place to place. Never really thought about it. Never really gave it a second, note in my mind, and yet it was there at the right moment. So I do think A Fantastic Woman is an almost fantastic film and highly worth watching for anyone. And yeah, I good stuff. I did watch the making of featurette. The Blu-ray boasts a making of featurette. It's an artificial eye release. I think I already said that. And it's like 2 minutes long, or 3 minutes. It was very bare bones. So there's not really much on this at all. There's a trailer and a very short. I mean, the making of featurette is essentially a trailer with some behind the scenes footage, I think. So that was a bit disappointing. I'd like to have seen a bit more on there, like a Q&A or something at least, which I'm sure would have been easily licensable, if that's even a word. So yeah, anyway, that's it. A Fantastic Woman. It's a thumbs up from me. It stays in the collection. Another Blu-ray conquered.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.